Welcome to Movie Time, where we dive into TV series recaps and movie spoilers. Let's get started. Dan thought he had planned the perfect holiday, a chance to escape, unwind, and spend Christmas with his family overseas. But nothing in his life ever went according to plan. Just as he was settling into what should have been a peaceful reunion with his daughter, a figure from his past reappeared. Finn, his half-brother, and the living reminder of unfinished business. After the chaos of the first film, life had begun to settle, at least on the surface. Dan had turned his skills into a successful security company, accepting high-profile contracts but always keeping his family first. Jessica was chasing her dream, aiming to become head of the women's track at Ohio State, while Nina had moved to London, balancing studies with a romance that might just be serious. Kyle was learning to drive. Max's life was busy, ordinary, and predictable until Finn stepped back into it. Finn wasn't just any family member. He was the product of their father McCaffrey's secret affair, the son who had been ignored and overlooked while Dan had always been the favored one. And Finn had spent his life simmering in that resentment, quietly plotting his revenge. Now independent, now dangerous, Finn had set his sights on the McCaffrey empire. His first target, the encrypted server that controlled a network of assassins, surveillance systems, and a fortune that had been the backbone of their father's operations. For Dan, this wasn't just about business. It was personal. If Finn succeeded, the Morgans would be at risk, and everything Dan had built could be destroyed. So when Finn made his move, Dan knew there was only one option: fight back. But confronting a brother fueled by years of hatred was never going to be simple. While Jessica, Nina, and Kyle worked frantically to dismantle McCaffrey's server from the inside, Dan prepared for a showdown that could change their lives forever. The McCaffrey mansion in Paris was everything a legend promised: grand, imposing, and filled with secrets. At its heart lay the encrypted server, the key to the empire Dan's father had built. And now, thanks to Dan unwittingly stealing the key from Cadogan Bank, Finn had stepped into his father's shadow, claiming control of Fortune, a network of deadly assassins and surveillance systems that could see everywhere. But instead of using that power to cement his place at the top of the criminal world, or to help others like him, abandoned and forgotten, Finn had one focus: Dan and his family. Dan had tried to reason with him. "I'm willing to fix what McCaffrey did," he said, pleading. But Finn's rage was a storm, blinding him to any olive branch. Words wouldn't stop him. Only action could. Dan and his family had to neutralize the server before Finn could unleash his vendetta. As they strategized, Kyle revealed a plan that could turn the tide. A flash drive, if Dan could make it into the mansion, would allow them to remotely access and wipe the server, cutting Finn off from his arsenal. The execution was risky. Dan and Omar would scale the mansion using their parkour skills, disable surveillance, and neutralize the guards positioned like chess pieces around the property. Once that was done, Omar would join Nina outside in a protest march, a clever distraction to keep Finn busy long enough for Dan to access the server. And if anything went wrong, Jessica had the critical role of evacuating the children, giving them new identities, and disappearing into anonymity. For a while, the plan seemed flawless. Dan slipped into the attic and began his descent into the mansion's core. But luck ran out. Finn, as relentless as ever, caught him. Simultaneously, Omar's protest drew the attention of law enforcement, and he was arrested, leaving Dan exposed. Finn was moments away from killing him on the spot, his eyes cold and merciless. Vikram, the butler who had seen decades of the McCaffrey dynasty, intervened. "Take him to the slaughterhouse," he advised. "Don't ruin the memories in this room." With no other choice, Finn agreed. In the chaos, Dan dropped the flash drive and discreetly signaled Jessica to abort the mission and get the kids to safety. Finn never noticed the drop drive, but he did spot the hidden camera and earpiece on Dan. With a cruel grin, he broadcasted a chilling message to the Morgans. Dan's time was over. Jessica refused to give up. She wasn't about to let Finn's rage dictate the fate of her family. Determined, she infiltrated the mansion, carrying the flash drive that could shut down the encrypted server and hoping to reach Dan before it was too late. As she navigated the attic and descended toward the server room, An unexpected ally emerged, Vikram, the ever-loyal butler. Despite serving Finn in appearance, Vikram's loyalty had always belonged to Dan, the legitimate McCaffrey heir. He revealed a secret hatch in the slaughterhouse, giving Dan a narrow path to escape. Finn noticed Vikram's betrayal and, in a rare moment of restraint, simply punched him in the nose instead of killing him. It was a subtle but telling moment. Finn's rage didn't make him entirely monstrous. There was a part of him buried beneath years of resentment that wasn't beyond redemption, a hint that the hatred consuming him wasn't his whole identity. Thanks to Vikram, Dan slipped into the catacombs beneath the mansion, the labyrinthine tunnels giving him a temporary edge over Finn and his assassins. Though Finn pursued relentlessly, Dan's skill and experience made him an unstoppable force. Meanwhile, Jessica faced her own battle. Guarding the server from a mercenary, she held her own long enough for Kyle, from a safe distance, to remotely access the flash drive and begin wiping the McCaffrey network. Outside, Nina, Max, and Kyle were spotted by Finn's men, forcing them to flee to the local fair to avoid capture. Yet Kyle successfully deactivated the entire system, bank accounts, surveillance, and assassin networks, effectively dismantling Finn's control and cutting him off from his father's empire. Enraged beyond measure, Finn abandoned his ambition to rule the McCaffrey empire and turned all his fury on Dan's family. The confrontation reached its climax in a church. Dan faced Finn in a brutal fight, each blow fueled by years of resentment. But Dan emerged victorious, leaving Finn battered and beaten. With the Morgans now wanted for the London bank robbery, surrendering to the police was the only way to stay safe from Finn's remaining men. Dan, too, was arrested after leaving the church. Thanks to Omar, whose father was the Secretary General of Interpol, Finn's crimes were exposed. He was apprehended, and the Morgans were finally freed. Amid the relief, Jessica shared her own triumph. She had secured the position of head of the women's track at Ohio State. Dan's joy at her success reassured them both. They could pursue their dreams while protecting their family. Almost a year later, life had regained a sense of normalcy for the Morgans. Thanksgiving found them gathered in Ohio, laughing and sharing stories. Omar promised he would be there for Christmas, a sign that his relationship with Nina was strong and that Dan was happy for it. During the Christmas season, Dan visited Finn in the French prison, not with anger, but with a gift, a jacket identical to his own. They played cards, just like they had in the past, and Finn smiled genuinely. Years of neglect and resentment began to fade. McCaffrey's favoritism had caused a rift, but with his empire dismantled and his death reported, Dan showed Finn that envy and hatred were unnecessary. Even behind bars, Finn could be part of the family he had been denied. Thanks for watching Movie Time. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a recap. See you next time for more.